Death, taxes, Boston College wins 7 games. Mark it down. Okay, for Steve Addazio in 6 seasons, it's happened 5 times. And it may have even included a bowl game cancellation to keep that streak alive and BC going 7-5 last year. So we're talking Boston College football, and the very best way to do it right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, is to bring in Dan Rubin from Eagles Unlimited. Dan, how you doing today?
You know, I'm calling last year an 8-win season. I don't care that the game was canceled. They were winning in that game. BC was over Boise State, and then the Texas Lightning came. So I'm calling it a win.
I wanted to see that game too. Touchdown lead, 2 interesting programs that never face off against each other. But yes, the Mother Nature took it away from us. All right, let's look at BC football. And unfortunately, while one area seems to be strengthened, then there are other areas in which become unknowns based on graduation losses. You had that offensive line for a few years in play that was arguably the best in the ACC. Now, most of those guys have moved on. And you've got this stud running back that we know about, A.J. Dillon, who obviously broke onto the scene in 2017 with a huge, enormous season. Curtailed to a certain extent by injuries last year, but still gained 1,100 yards. So let's start right there with the bell cow, the guy that everybody knows about, A.J. Dillon.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably one of the best players in college football, and I don't think a lot of people are gonna disagree with me there. He's phenomenal. He's fantastic, and he's really benefited from BC maturing as a program, coming out of the rebuild that Steve Addazio had to do on both sides of the ball. But really, he benefited his freshman year when he was just a comet, and has turned into a player that is one of college football's most electric football players, most greatest running backs, I would even say, that's in the game right now. A big beast who can do it all: run over guys, run around guys, and have that secondary burst. Last year he did get dinged up, missed some time with an ankle injury, and I think that's probably why his numbers might appear diminished, more so than because it nags, and when you have one of those soft tissue ankle injuries, it tends to nag through the course of a season. But he's going to be healthy this year, and I think he could be on the verge of doing some really great things. And you know what? It's his junior year. So if the right things break the right way for him, his name is going to be in the conversation that a lot of people might be expecting it to be this year.
But even great backs need a push up front. They need a crease. They need something. And of course, Boston College, as I mentioned off the top, has had a near elite offensive line in recent years. But unknown quantities have to step up and fill those voids this year with losing 4 guys up front.
Yep, and for the majority of college football, you'll be able to look at Boston College and say that it is an unknown quantity because of the guys who are gone. The names are gone. Those big names like Chris Lindstrom, who was a first-round draft pick from Atlanta, going to protect another BC guy down there who people may have heard of. But guys like John Baker, guys who are just guys who were in the program and helped build BC up as O-line U, back to being O-line U, where they were for so many years. Now what you're going to see is a testament to the system. There are still guys in place who have experience, guys who are experienced in the system, older guys like John Phillips, who's a grad student offensive lineman, Anthony Palazzolo, grad student offensive lineman out of Connecticut. Both are guys, big guys, 6'5", 6'6", 300 pounds. The guys like Eddie Fish, who's a redshirt junior, Elijah Johnson, who has had a number of years in the system and lost a year for an injury, and guys who have been able to play now plug in and get real snaps against real opponents. Guys who have played in the past plug back into the lineup. Guys like Ben Petrula, who actually started at center a couple of years ago because BC lost John Baker that year to center, and just out of sheer necessity, they had a 300-pound freshman playing center. So it's going to be really exciting to see how the system transitions these guys. It's not going to change a whole lot, even with a new offensive coordinator. The offensive line is still the bread and butter of what Steve Addazio coaches. And I think these guys who step in are now going to be a testament to the transition phase where you can lose 3-4 guys on your line, plug in 3-4 guys, not miss a beat, hand off to the 3-4 guys who are going to be coming up behind them, guys like Tyler Vrabel, who's head coach played for Bill Belichick on the defensive side of the ball and is now the head coach. His father, rather, is Mike Vrabel, who played linebacker for Bill Belichick on the Patriots and now coaches the Tennessee Titans. So there are guys who are going to be coming in, redshirt freshmen and freshmen, who can now learn from this and continue that stage. For me, that's what college sports is all about, being able to turn over those 3-4 guys that are gone every 1 or 2 years.
Dan, as we approach the passing game portion of the conversation, I'm going to allude to one of my favorite games of all time. This was about 2015, the BC 3-0 loss at Wake Forest, in which, again, as we discussed at the time, so Dan's been joining me since about 2013, I believe, 2014, something in that range, where BC fielded arguably the best defenses in the country and had no offense, anemic offense, to the point in that game that is the capsule example of what was wrong with BC football at the time. They couldn't punch it in against a marginal at best defense. So the big goose egg, no, it was not weather related, just a goose egg. Couldn't put up a field goal against Wake Forest in losing 3-0. And if you want to see an anemic box score, check out that game from, I believe, 2015. Fast forward just a few years to 2018, and Anthony Brown, by a lot of measurements, so the Big 12 or some of the elite passing attacks in the nation, isn't putting up prolific numbers, but 20 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And with the likes of Jeff Smith and Tommy Sweeney moving on, unfortunately, but putting up the best numbers in the receiving core for the most part, the passing game and Anthony Brown's contribution is light years beyond what we were seeing 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, and I love that I can smile and laugh about that now because of how far the offense has come since then. And when I look back at those years when you had guys like Jeff Smith, who became a wide receiver, who had to play quarterback because Darius Wade got injured. I think of those years and I think, boy, the cupboard was really bare, and in some areas you didn't have any ingredients. You had to go food shop, and there were no ingredients available to cook with. So you think back to those years, and now you come full circle and the cupboard's stocked. I mean, especially at the quarterback position, especially what I feel is a very underrated wide receiver and tight end crew. Anthony Brown is, in my opinion, one of the top 3 returning quarterbacks in the ACC. I'm going to put Trevor Lawrence number 1. I mean, everybody should and will put him number 1. But when you think about the guys who are returning, the experience in the league, the quarterback personnel that left, Anthony Brown is a guy who doesn't stand out and maybe should. He put up some of the best numbers for single season purposes in Boston College program history last year. Now, I know it's a passing game. I know that things have changed to the point where it gets a little bit more wide open, but that's a testament to a guy who has developed and learned how to throw the football and has guys who can catch the football. Now, there are still a couple of question marks around Anthony, namely his health. He seems to be hurt. I know he had a knee injury a couple of years ago. Last year was knocked out of the Clemson game, gets banged up. Maybe that's just part of his development, learning how to get rid of the ball instead of trying to gain the yard and take the hit. Scramble a different way, step up into the pocket and don't absorb that extra hit. I mean, those are things that he's learning and has been developing. Now in his third full year as a starter, third year entering as the starter, you see the chemistry that he has with the running game that he has. You see guys like Kobe White, who's a wide receiver. They can hook up the right way. Now, yes, he does have to develop new chemistry or different chemistry with different receivers. Tommy Sweeney is a tight end, pass catching tight end. He's gone, but you have other guys coming in who have the same skill sets as him. Guys like Ray Martin out of the backfield, who's an old fashioned fullback type player. Guys like Jake Burt, who's a grad student who maybe was held back from getting some of those snaps because you had Tommy Sweeney. Cor Abadrizi, same idea. Hunter Long is a redshirt sophomore who, when I watched him in training camp last year, I was blown away with his length, his speed, things that he can do as a guy who's 6'5" and is out of New Hampshire, where nobody really thinks of guys coming out of the football factory. And the guy that I'm really excited to see is Danny Dalton. Danny Dalton was a 4-star recruit out of Massachusetts who committed to Penn State over Boston College at the time. I think he was looking at Boston College and committed to Penn State and has now transferred back home to play at Boston College. And he's a guy that, if you think about the raw talent that he had in high school, if you grew up around these parts, you watched him at Marshfield, you know exactly what he could do back then. A few years later, I'm really excited to see what he can bring to the table as a guy on that graduate transfer. I think there are some really intriguing options to help Anthony continue. And given his natural progression as a quarterback, I think that this offense is going to be electric at times. I think that there are things about the way that they run this offense with a new offensive coordinator with Mike Bajakian that is just going to be enhancing the core values of what Boston College football, with its power running and its ability to control the clock through tempo. I'm really excited to see what these guys can do.
So with Scott Leffler moving on to Bowling Green as the offensive coordinator and a new offensive coordinator in play, we look at the 2018 stats, and Boston College was pretty much, whether it was rushing, passing, scoring, pick your statistic, about middle of the pack in the ACC offensively. So do we expect any different type of approach based on the change of offensive coordinators?
I don't think so. I think that they're still going to retain who they are. I don't think that Steve Adazio is going to come out and say, all right, we can run a Big 12 offense now. I don't think that's something that he would ever do. I feel that like I said, the core values of Boston College, controlling the clock, slowing things down, but maintaining tempo, where you're able to go no huddle and prevent substitutions by working within the full 40 seconds that you have to snap the ball once you get set and get the play in, and moving along those lines. They are a tempo style team, but they are not go fast. They have the ability to go lightning quick. They know how to. They've worked on that. But when you watch Boston College and you see how they can get into that tempo like a drum beat, it's really impressive, given the way that some of these offenses are in college football, that, quite frankly, Steve Adazio has said, I can control the clock and then force another team, grind it down and grind them down with the weapons that I have. And I think that's going to be exciting for football people to watch.